Well, good morning and welcome to Ben Salem Baptist Church live stream devotional. Welcome to the Source of Truth podcast. We are glad you've taken time to join us on this Tuesday morning, and I will start by apologizing again. The same thing I did last Tuesday by apologizing for not doing Mondays. Yesterday, I honestly just wasn't feeling well. And I sat down on the couch for a little bit and looked up, it was 12 something. So I've already made some plans to make sure that won't happen again. More than likely, I will pre-record Monday's devotional. That way it's there, it's ready to go for those using it. And usually I was doing that on Friday. I would do the live one, then I'd record one more from Monday, or sometimes come Sunday and do it. And so we will make sure that's done. I don't want to get in the habit of skipping a day. Appreciate your understanding, and so more than likely the Mondays will not be live as they'll be recorded. I hope you still come. I mean, they'll be streamed live. But you might notice I'm wearing the same outfit as I did a different day of the week. But we hope you'll still continue to join us on those times. I'd rather that than miss them if we can we can help that. But we definitely appreciate you joining us today on this Tuesday. Today we're going to do something a little different, and we've been doing the book of Proverbs, but today we're going to jump into a chapter, and really just take just a few minutes from a different chapter in Psalms today. Honestly, it was what I was thinking of, something I was thinking of doing yesterday and never got to, and as we begin this week. So it will be in Psalm 25 here in just a moment. Let me explain a little bit of my thinking. Today, obviously Tuesday, 1 week from today, we will be voting on senators and congressmen, state legislature, and of course our president. And there's been a lot of vitriol, a lot of chaos in this world over all of this. And what I want us to do is I want us to be refocused. We have one more week, and inevitably the news broadcasts are going to get uglier. The attacks are going to get sillier. The things that we're going to be called for whatever position we hold are going to get worse. And honestly, it's just this next week generally does not usually paint a good picture on our country. It's part of the political process, it's part of free speech, it's part of all those things, and I'm a big proponent of all of those things. But it's easy with the temperature, everything else going on, with COVID and lockdowns and the unemployment rate and finances for some people. A lot of these things are complicated. They're really overwhelming. And then the fear, the talk, COVID's upticking, and we knew it might in the fall, that there'd be some upticks, just like the flu does and just like cold does, things of that nature. We knew the viruses will uptick a little bit. I will suggest this. I find it interesting that the amount of cases are upticking, but they don't talk much about the death rate because it's just so low. Anyway, a lot of it just comes down to how we're going to let the events of the world that we cannot control affect us, drive us, make us to make decisions. And so what I want to do is just take just a couple minutes today from the book of Psalm, chapter 25. And honestly, I could have gone to a million chapters in Psalms, as you know, because David found himself in many scenarios where he was struggling, where he was fearful, where he was frustrated emotionally. If you study the book of Psalms or you study anything about David, you're going to find that he was emotional. He's up and down, as by the way, musicians normally are. And he was a musician, and he did a lot. Some of the best musicians are very emotional. It's how they get some great truths and that's how the music comes out often so beautiful. Because of they're much more emotional. David was. And so you get to see the highs and lows, which is good because it's great for us, as many of us will battle with our emotions throughout the day and throughout the week and throughout the events that take place. And so I'm going to encourage you, unless you really need some information, maybe limit yourself to what you might do when it comes to this week and spend your time in God's Word and watching things that are encouraging and with family. Don't allow it to drive you down. This Wednesday we have our Fall Fest. It'll be predominantly outside of rain. If it rains, we'll move to the gym, but we're expecting to be outside. And so we hope you come. Just have a great time. Come, roast a s'more, hot dog, and then just go home. But I encourage you to come. Bring your kids, bring your grandkids, get some candy, play some games, and we're looking forward to a great time. So we encourage you to do that. But that would be some ways for some distraction as we move towards this time. But I want to take these next few minutes and have a more, I don't want to say distraction, a refocus, as it were, from Psalm chapter 25. Let's go ahead and read the first few verses. It says, "Unto thee, O Lord, do I lift up. O my God, I trust in thee. Let me not be ashamed. Let not mine enemies triumph over me. Yea, let none that wait on thee be ashamed. Let them be ashamed which transgress without cause. Show me thy ways, O Lord. Teach me thy paths. Lead me in thy truth and teach me, for thou art the God of my salvation. On thee do I wait all day. Remember, O Lord, thy tender mercies and thy loving kindnesses, for they have been ever of old. Remember not the sins of my youth, nor the transgressions according to thy mercy. Remember thou me for thy goodness' sake, O Lord. Good and upright is the Lord, therefore he will teach sinners in the way. The meek will he guide in judgment, and the meek will he teach his way. Let's go ahead and just take a few minutes. Obviously, there's a little more in the context than just, hey, trust in God in the midst of these crazy times. When we refocus, let's just go back to verse 1. Oh, unto thee, O Lord, do I lift up my soul. In these times of chaos, as you hear the news and all these different things, and by the way, I've made this prediction, I find it interesting. I am still curious on some of the things that are so important today. Some of the things in the news between the virus and all these other things are so important. I am curious. I could be 100% wrong, but I'm curious as if a week from tomorrow, how much the news will change. How much of the news has been nothing but certain topics that just probably will have minimal coverage coming next Wednesday. I'm really intrigued by it. Some of it will be the result of the election, but I'm intrigued by that. We'll see. But we think about all that the world could bring, and we can become overwhelmed. And really, I saw this chapter, and I looked at it and said, unto thee, O Lord, do I lift up my soul. There are going to be times this week we need to stop and say, Lord, I just need your help. Now, but can I go beyond this week? Because this period in our culture, this period in our history, church history, world history, American history, all these things have brought unrest and disconcertment. And it's just easy for us to become consumed with everything going on in this world. And we miss, what we talked about was a Sunday, one of the passages we read from Hebrews 12, where it says, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. That was the key, looking unto Jesus, considering Jesus, keeping our eyes focused upon him. Peter walked on the water. He was fully immune to the effects of the storm and the effects of the waves and the effects of physics, to be honest with you, as he kept his eyes on Jesus. And the moment he took his eyes off Jesus, he became consumed and now a victim to the circumstances around him. Circumstances around us today are not great. But isn't it something that if we can focus our eyes on Jesus, we do not have to be victims of our circumstances. We can come above them. In Proverbs, not too long ago, we talked about the idea that he that ruleth his own soul, he is better than those who can take a city, great warriors. That's really what it comes down to. I'm not ruling my soul. I put my trust in God. And when I put my trust in God, I allow that to be the source of my strength, and I'm not consumed with circumstances. I'm not allowed circumstances to affect me. Warren Reeves put it this way: don't let your present circumstance decide your present walk. Don't let what's going on right now force you to make decisions. And many of us do. In highs and lows, we'll make sometimes life-changing decisions. I was talking to somebody just some of this week, we were getting to know him, and I was chatting with him a little bit, and he made a comment. He said, I made a mistake once, and it's kind of the worst part of my day. I just quit my job, and I did all this, and then Monday, I'm like, what did I just do? And some have done that. It can happen that way. We want to be careful that in these times of distress and things like that, we're careful that we don't make rash decisions. Sometimes we have to make decisions. A lot of times it's where to work, what to do. Sometimes we do. But in reality, we're careful not to make rash decisions. Move forward. Careful to understand that we still come to God and we lift up our soul to him. And this time, Lord, it doesn't make sense and I don't understand and I don't want to make decisions based upon my circumstances. So help me, Lord, in this scenario. So he says, oh my God, verse 2, I trust in thee. Let me not be ashamed. Let not mine enemies triumph over me. When I was growing up, that was a song we used to sing. People still sometimes sing it today. But he says that, I trust in thee. Let me not be ashamed. Now, I love that phrase. Because sometimes, I don't know if you've done this, I go to the Lord and I say, Lord, I don't understand exactly what you're doing, but I understand that I spent a lot of time with you and I believe I'm right in this decision and I don't understand how it turned out. Lord, let me not be ashamed as I followed you. Lord, you're in control. May you honor the decisions made. And because sometimes it seems like the people who do wrong are the ones that win. Their life is good. We get this idea. We know we don't want it, but this idea that when someone's real wrong, man, why hasn't God done something? We love God's long-suffering in us, but not necessarily in those who have wronged us. And that's true. We really do. And it's part of the flesh, and we've got to be careful to leave them to God, and as we have been left to God when we've wronged other people. And we need to just keep our eyes focused on God and say, I will trust in you, but Lord, let me not be ashamed. I put my trust in you. I followed you, and maybe you've made sacrifices. Lord, let me see your grace. And it's okay to pray that way. Obviously, David did. He said, listen, I'm doing right. I'm following you. Lord, don't let the world look at me as your servant and mock you. I mean, wouldn't it be something? Think about this. Let's go back to 1 Samuel, where David was standing in front of Goliath. Imagine what it would have been like. That David stands and he looks at his brothers, we said Sunday, and he says, is there not a cause? And then he kind of mocks the people. This young shepherd boy mocks these soldiers for not taking on Goliath. Then he goes into Saul and he says, I'm going to take on Goliath. And Saul hands him his arm. He goes, no, I haven't tested this. Let me go out as a shepherd with my sling. And it wouldn't have been something as he does all of this, claiming the name of Jesus and trusting Jesus and trusting God, and walking out onto the field, standing there and claiming in the name of God he's going to take Goliath down, to pick up the stone, to throw it, and to completely miss. And then to miss 4 more times. Can you imagine, we know the passage where they were defying, Goliath was defying the armies of the living God. He was defying the power of God to work in this small army. And so he's like, can you imagine what it would have said for the name of God in that kingdom for Israel? Not just for David, because David is doing it in the name of God. Can you imagine? He says, in his mind, Lord, let me not be ashamed. I mean, I don't want to die out here, but it's more about the fact that the Israelites are going to be slaves to the Philistines now and all these things, but it's your name they're impugning, so Lord, please. And can you imagine how the story would have been different if in those 5 stones David had missed and all of a sudden Goliath comes down, and can you imagine how the story would have changed? Well, no one would sit back and say, oh, this is a David and Goliath moment. They wouldn't have done that. Because you look at that story, you see God's grace, God's goodness, and you see God's power. And you know it has to be that. Something else intervened. Same general idea. It says, listen, I continue to follow you in faith. Let me not be ashamed. Let me tell you, as you're walking in Jesus, if you stay close to God, you can honestly say that, Lord, I've done my best. I've done right. To the best of my knowledge, let me not be ashamed. Because they're not my enemies trying. And David is in struggle. He's seeking God. He's following after God. And he goes, don't let my enemies who are after me be the ones to cause grief. He goes, verse 4, how do I do this? Show me your ways, Lord. Teach me thy paths. Lead me in thy truth and teach me. For thou art the God of my salvation. On thee do I wait all day. He said, let me be guided by you. And one of the things we've learned in Proverbs, as we've talked about it several times, is the idea that a wise person will seek knowledge. We don't like correction, but a wise person will accept it, and they will evaluate the correction. Sometimes the correction's wrong. So we evaluate it, and we say, you know what, I understand where they're coming, but it's not accurate. I can toss that out, but boy, this one was good. And I can become better in this. Why? Because I want to become better. I want to be wiser. I want to be closer to God. So I want you to lead me. And leading me sometimes is correction. For me to be going the right way, sometimes I have to be told when I'm going the wrong way. For me to do things right, I have to be told when I'm doing it wrong. None of us are perfect. And so we need God's direction. And David said, listen, I don't want to be ashamed in you, but continue to lead me, guide me. As I do my best to follow you, may you have authority and control and sovereignty in all of this. And so he says, let me not be ashamed, all the things that he can continue to say after all that. Verse 6, remember me, O Lord, remember, O Lord, thy tender mercies and thy loving kindness, for they have been ever of old. Please remember and continue to give to me all of these things. I'm glad that God is of tender mercies and of loving kindness. I'm glad of that. Then I love what he says in 7, remember not the sins of my youth, nor my transgressions according to thy mercy. Remember thou me for thy goodness' sake, O Lord. He really is just having this walk with God. I want to lift up my eyes to, and he's just being honest before God. Lord, please don't hold my past mistakes in my youth or even yesterday against me. Father, let me follow you. I'm right with you. The freedom that comes from that. You see, really what I see in this passage as I evaluate it and is simply saying, Lord, in these times of trial and these times of confusion and disunity and chaos in our culture, let my walk be with you. Let my focus be on you. And in doing that, I find peace, I find joy, I find strength. And that's really what he's looking for, and that's what we can have. God wants to offer peace. Sometimes we say, well, if God offers peace, he'll eliminate the problem. God's not going to solve our political problem today, and maybe the person you're going to vote for won't make it in office. And I'm not going to say that wouldn't be disappointing. I'm not going to say that if the wrong type of policies get implemented coming 2021, that it's not going to potentially be different for churches. And I don't deny if some of the things that I've heard that are going to potentially be put out there, if the wrong political thinking gets put in office, I'm not talking economically, I'm talking spiritually. And I mean this. It's going to be a very different world for Christians moving forward if a certain thinking gets in office. It's just going to be. It's going to be much harder. There's no political correctness that's going to protect Christians, and it's just the way it is. And so part of me hopes if certain thinking gets in office simply because it would be easier for us. We'd have the support of the White House, which we won't have the other way. There's no doubt about that. Just the things they've said they want to do, things they've done already. But that doesn't matter. If that's what God has, that's what God has. And he says, I'm going to be with you. My focus should not be in any of that. It should be in walking with him, because no matter who gets in office, it doesn't make a difference. This is what will give me strength. My genuine walk with God, because he is the Lord of my salvation. If you may be watching this or listening to this later, that is what you need. If you're not saved, that's what you need. You don't need religion. You don't need just church or just baptism. You don't need spiritual disciplines. You need Jesus. And when you get Jesus in your life, then those things take form. Then church makes sense, and baptism makes sense, and all the other things that come with it, those make sense because you have Jesus. It doesn't make sense if you start with those things. Find Jesus and let those things come after. Then they make sense, and they offer a power and a life-changing thing that does not make sense outside of that. Let me encourage you to do that. But if you're a Christian today, sometimes we just need to stop and just, under thee, O Lord, do I lift my voice. That's okay. It's okay to voice our concern, fears, cry a little bit, come to God, because he knows. And boy, may we find our peace in him, because he's the only one that can really answer it. And he won't interrupt you. He won't tell you how much worse his day than yours. He'll just listen. And his Holy Spirit will commune with your spirit. And I'm telling you what, it'll be the strength you need, not only just in these times, in all the times that we find ourselves in. I hope you do that. And I hope maybe that this week, that would be a level of encouragement to you. I know it has been to me as I've been studying it. And tomorrow we'll jump back into the book of Proverbs and continue in. I hope this is a level of encouragement. I hope it's helpful. And may we continue just focus, as Paul said in Hebrews, focus our eyes upon Jesus, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. He's in control. He knows what's going on. He knows what's going to happen. So may we continue to lean upon his sovereignty and trust in him. Thank you for joining us today on this Tuesday for these about approximately 20 minutes as we focus our eyes upon Jesus and continue to reestablish. And I love this because when I get back and I study for this, it refocuses me every time back on Jesus. Even preachers need that. And I hope that all of us would recognize the need of it and the power that comes from it and find strength in it. We love you. Thank you for giving us the time to be with us here on our live stream or listening later on the podcast. And we're grateful for it. May you have a great afternoon and a great remainder of this week. Hope to see you again next time tomorrow. God bless.